Let's bring in Dr. Raywat Deonandan, epidemiologist, science communicator at the University of Ottawa. Dr. Ray, good morning.
Good morning.
Do you agree with Dr. Moore or Dr. Uni?
Of course, I agree with Dr. Uni. You knew that was coming. We're in an interesting position right now. We have vaccination, and it is rolling out reasonably well, but not as quickly as it should. And we have this new threat of the Delta variant. So the story right now is one of two characters, the villain, the Delta variant, and the hero, the vaccines. And it strikes me that until we can give the hero a better advantage in winning this fight, maybe we shouldn't be moving the scenarios a bit too much.
But the spoiler here is the unvaccinated.
Exactly right.
So you want to shut down, keep everything shut down because of the people who are refusing to get in line.
Now, let's be clear. I don't want to shut things down. Right now,
hold it
we're
as
pretty open. Yeah, we're pretty open right now. In fact, we're more open right now than we have been at any other time in the pandemic. Think about that. And yet, we are seeing a doubling of cases every 10 days. We are in exponential growth right now.
But there aren't doubling in hospitals, right? And ICUs are doing
not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. And hopefully they won't. But think about this.
Yeah.
We have about 70% fully vaccinated, which means 30% have one dose or less. And that's not good because Delta is quite dismissive of one dose. So that means a large susceptible population still exists. And Delta is possibly the most infectious respiratory virus we've ever seen. In fact, it might be a different disease entirely than COVID class.
Okay, that's the first time I've heard that. So this is nothing to mess with. This isn't just COVID on steroids. This is worse than pneumonia. This is the worst we may have ever seen.
In terms of contagiousness.
Okay.
Right. It's like chickenpox. Chickenpox is very contagious. So as a result of its hyper-contagiousness, it means it'll tear through an unvaccinated population unless mitigation tools are in place. Right? So that's what we see in places like Louisiana and Texas and Florida, where the unvaccinated are becoming hospitalized. Right? We have that's pretty clear right now. It's those states with low vaccination rates are having a toll on their hospital system. So things don't have to close. I don't think lockdowns are in our future because we have the tools needed to control this. Two tools in particular, vaccination and masks. Keep the indoor mask mandate and just ratchet up vaccination like nobody's business, and we're fine. So again, this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated right now. So,
which begs the question, when do we move from the carrot to the stick?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? That's a civil liberties question.
It is.
I'm not going to touch that one. But I think we should be unrolling all of the tools to incentivize vaccination without making it mandatory for the general public. I think some professions can do with some compulsory action, but in general, we shouldn't be forcing people to inject something. We should be convincing them that it's the right thing. So remember, if everyone gets vaccinated, this goes away.
Yes. I mean, there's the headline, right? There's the headline. Yeah. You get your shot, we go back to normal. Everybody's got to get on board, though. Now, the question is globally, right? Because it's a very different pandemic. There are countries. I spoke to a Gatineau restaurant owner yesterday who's from Peru, and you can imagine, he said that access to the vaccine, we take it for granted now, but access to the vaccine in many countries, they're still waiting. His relatives are getting sick by the day.
That's exactly right. We don't realize how spoiled we are. Right? We are swimming in vaccines that nobody wants, and the world needs it. This does not go away globally until everyone is vaccinated. WHO has a rule now, or a recommendation, that no one should be giving third doses until every country has at least 10% vaccinated. I think there should be a Manhattan Project level endeavor, manufacture and distribute as much vaccination globally as we possibly can to get the world back to normal. We can. We have the technology. We have the wealth. What we need is political will.
Pharmaceuticals, maybe you could stop taking so many profits and start sharing with those who need it most. I'm saying that. You don't have to comment if you don't want to.
Well, apparently I'm a shill for Big Pharma, so I'm not supposed to comment.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot to be had here, a lot to be done by those with resources.
Yeah.
Can contribute a great deal.
Yeah, if I were hesitant, I would say, well, you know what? I'll do my part if Big Pharma does it for the rest of the world, because it's not just me holding out. There's a lot of people who want it and can't get it. But that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, it is. This pandemic has revealed a distribution of resources crisis around the world. We have to re-examine exactly how we look at equity.
U of Ottawa leading the pack when it comes to students' mandatory vaccinations. You know, at U of T, they're asking that you do it, but they're going to actually self-declare. The students will not be asked to prove it. I worry about, we either got to prove it or we don't. I mean, the honor system right now, I don't think should be part of this. I think there's a reason why we're making barcodes in Quebec and pieces of paper here in Ontario.
It is concerning, right? And I hate to think that I cannot rely upon my fellow human being to act honorably, but I don't think I can anymore. And if you're not vaccinated, at least be proud about it and don't lie about it.
Yeah.
And the critical part here, ethically for me, is if you're not vaccinated, there should be accommodation for you. Like you got to attend school remotely or prove that you've got a negative test, some additional hoops to jump through. We don't want to deny anyone access to services. We just want to make sure that those who are vaccinated get priority access.
So it's kind of like your own vaccine passport, the exception, of course, if you want to be on campus. But here's the bigger question. You obviously support vaccine passports as an incentive, correct?
Yes.
And at what point do we say they have to be mandatory? I mean, how much patience does Dr. Raywat Deonandan have these days?
I would never say that vaccines should be mandatory for the general public. I think it should be mandatory for some professions and some contexts that are voluntary. No one's making you go to the restaurant. No one's making you go to this university. No one's making you have this job. But you shouldn't be holding people down and sticking things in their arms. But I think there should be a lot of incentivizations in society to convince people that it is the best thing to do.
But there are vaccinations that we basically tell parents, if you want your kids to go to school, they must have. They're far less of a threat than COVID. So why won't we be doing the same thing?
Oh, I think we will.
Once it's approved.
A year from now, probably. Yes, but that's not the same as making it compulsory for a citizen. Like no one is making you take a vaccine to exist. They're saying if you don't take the vaccine, you cannot attend the school in person. You must do other things.
Yeah.
So denying access is one way to cajole participation, but it's not making something compulsory in and of itself. It's a fine line, I know, but to me, that's where the ethical line is. But yeah, we got to unroll all the tools. And I understand people's hesitancy, especially around children. I totally get it. I wouldn't want to stick new things into my kids' veins. But we got to show people what the data actually says. We have to show people what you get out of this and what the trajectory of getting out of this as a species looks like if everyone agrees to this.
The roller coaster ride continues. We had, some relief. The numbers came down. We were talking about a normal fall, enter the Delta, and the potential for fourth wave. On a scale of 1 to 10, Dr. Ray Deonandan, how concerned are you?
Oh, boy. Concerned about what? I'm like a 5, honestly, a 5 or 6. And the reason I'm not that high is because we have the tools to deal with this. If this was last year, I was terrified because this thing is coming and we don't know how to control it. We know how to control it. We just have to choose to control it now.
Dr. Raywat Deonandan, I always appreciate your insights, sir, and your time, of course.
Thank you very much.
9:47 coming up. We're